when I eventually moved from where I went to high school at, I went to high school for a couple years at a high school called Downey High. And eventually I moved where my mom was at, which was at my grandparents, where she was taking care of them. And I went back to the city only knowing people that I went to middle school with. Right. I didn't really know a whole lot of folks because I had been out the city for a few years. Came back and thankfully because of like MySpace and a lot of these social medias that were up at that time, no Instagram, no anything like that, but MySpace was literally the reason why somebody 15 minutes, not even 15, probably about 10 minutes away from where I lived at on my side of Delamo, one of my friends named Graham, he was like, "Yo, man, you dope at what you do." I'm like, "Yo, you dope at what you do. Like, we should link up." And I literally invited him over to the house, and he kind of gave me a lay of the land how it currently was. And he was like, "Yo, you got to meet my guy Ab Soul." At the time, Ab Soul wasn't signed to TDE. He was signed to a label called Street Beat Entertainment with Javante, another singer that has worked with TDE a lot. And so I never forget, Graham, I was working with him because he's a fantastic, still is a fantastic MC. He introduced me to Ab Soul. They introduced me to a group called Top Notch. But because of that relationship with all of them, it gave me the opportunity to work with Soul on a pretty frequent basis before he was signed to TDE. And I remember he was telling me, he's like, "Man, sometimes getting in the studio at the other spot is a little bit of a challenge because there's other artists." He's like, "You're allowing me to get in here and, you know, cook up as much as I want. We're throwing ideas at the wall." To me, he sounded like a young Jay-Z when I started producing for him. So I felt like very, lucky to be in that position. But yeah, man, we just worked and worked and worked. And I remember when he got signed to TDE, he pulled up to my house uh in Carson off of Hilford in his car, and he got out the passenger seat and he showed me his TDE tattoo and he was like, "Oh, it's official." And he told me, "Burn me a CD full of beats." And he was like, I'm gonna take it over to the studio and I'm gonna float it around. And then whatever happens, happens. And one of those beats that was on that CD was the first beat that you heard Kendrick Lamar and Ab Soul rapping together on a project of Ab Soul's. It was my beat called Watch Your Lady. And so, man, just being in that environment, getting to know Ali, getting to know Soundwave, Dave Free, getting to know Top, Punch, all of them good folks. Schoolboy Q. Matter of fact, the beat that you keep hearing Schoolboy Q talk about that he says eventually was one of the reasons he got signed was over my beat. My beat was terrible. It had nothing but 808s and gunshots. And he always talks about that being like a pretty pivotal moment as he was introducing himself as a rapper to TDE. So I was around in the very early years. You know what I mean? I was still very much doing things on my own in Carson, but they were very close by. But I would say that's probably the closest thing to my big break in the very beginning because it just opened me up to a lot of different networks because of that relationship.